I'll begin my comments by saying that I think we should try to learn what we can from foreign counterparts to the extent that it might be relevant and consistent with our own values and governmental system. Accordingly, I have a couple questions in that vein. And Director Mueller, I would like to direct the first one to you. Scotland Yard has a system of special branches that pass sanitized intelligence information to the police and to the private sector. The British Security Service sends staff to the special branch offices. This gives them a national reach. Do you believe this approach could work in the United States? Why and why not? Or why not?
Well, I think aspects of it certainly could work. I think our joint terrorism task forces that we've set up around the country are a variation of that type of system. We are far larger than Great Britain. We have something like 18,000 police departments, 17,000, 18,000 police departments throughout the United States. And we're unlike Australia, Canada, which has the RCMP, or Great Britain. And that distinction makes a big difference. We are a democracy, and we are democratized our policing within the United States. And the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, in my mind, are mechanisms whereby we can accomplish the same type of sharing that is done by Scotland Yard. One of the things we are doing is that we are integrating in the task forces individuals from the CIA in the country, so that we have ready on scene that type of information that is inside the CIA computers that can match up with the information we may have in the state and local level, which in my mind goes some distance towards accomplishing what the MI5 model does in Great Britain.
June 2002, testimony before the joint inquiry, DCI tenant and FBI Director Mueller asserted in explaining how the September 11 hijackers had avoided the notice of the intelligence community, that the conspirators intentionally avoided actions or associations that would have attracted law enforcement attention during their time in the United States. The DCI said, quote, "Once in the U.S., the hijackers were careful, with the exception of minor traffic violations, to avoid drawing law enforcement attention and even general notice that might identify them as extremists. They dressed in Western clothes. Most shaved their beards before entering the United States, and they largely avoided mosques," end quote. FBI Director Mueller appeared to concur. Quote, "While here, the hijackers effectively operated without suspicion, triggering nothing that would have alerted law enforcement and doing nothing that exposed them to domestic coverage. As far as we know, they contacted no known terrorist sympathizers in the United States," end quote. The former assistant director for the FBI's counterterrorism division also emphasized this point in his testimony. Quote, "There were no contacts with anybody we were looking at inside the United States. Quite honestly, with zero contact in the United States of any of our known people, with the 19 persons coming here that we had no information about intelligence-wise before, though no one's fault. That's how they did it," end quote. However, the joint inquiry review of documents and interviews of FBI personnel indicate that the 6 hijackers who served as the leaders and facilitators of the September 11 attacks were not isolated in the United States, but instead maintained a number of contacts in the United States before September 11th. Although the extent to which the persons with whom they were in contact in the United States were aware of the September plot is unknown, it is clear that those persons provided some of the hijackers with substantial assistance while they prepared for the attacks. These contacts in the United States helped hijackers find housing, open bank accounts, obtain driver's licenses, locate flight schools, and facilitate transactions. The record of the joint inquiry demonstrates that some persons known to the FBI through prior or then current FBI counterterrorism inquiries and investigations may have had contact with the hijackers. For example, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar, had numerous contacts with a long-term FBI counterterrorism informant while they were living in San Diego, California. There are several indicators that hijacker Hani Hanjour may have had more limited contact with this individual in December of 2000. For September 11th, hijackers Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, Hani Hanjour, Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, and possibly others had contact with people who had come to the FBI's attention during counterterrorism or counterintelligence inquiries or investigations. In all, some of the hijackers were in various degrees of contact with at least 14 such persons, 4 of whom were the focus of active FBI investigations while the hijackers were in the United States. Before September 11th, Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, Hani Hanjour, Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, and possibly other hijackers attended at least 7 mosques in California, Florida, Virginia, Arizona, and Maryland, some of which were also attended by persons of interest to the FBI. The fact that so many persons known to the FBI may have been in contact with the hijackers raises questions as to how much the FBI knew about the activities of Islamic extremist groups in the United States before September 11th, and whether the FBI was well positioned to thwart the attack. Moreover, the extent to which the hijackers interacted with and relied on other persons in the United States is vitally important in understanding the modus operandi of the hijackers and al-Qaeda and in preventing future attacks. At a joint inquiry hearing on October 2nd, 2002, FBI Director Mueller commented on his earlier testimony about the hijackers' conduct in the United States. Quote, "When I say that the hijackers did nothing that exposed them to domestic coverage, and when I say that the hijackers contacted no known terrorist sympathizers in the United States, I meant in the context of the hijackers not contacting, before 9/11, terrorist sympathizers on whom we had technical or other form of coverage. The point being that they had done so, we might have been able to identify them as a result of that coverage. When making that statement, I did not have in mind what may have been known to the Bureau about persons such as Omar al-Bayoumi, a Saudi living in California, who may have assisted hijackers Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdhar. I can see, however, how the statement could be subject to an alternate interpretation that even as of June 18, 2001, we had uncovered no persons who had had contact with the hijackers and were terrorist sympathizers. I can assure the committee that I had no intent to mislead," end quote. In a written response to the joint inquiry, the FBI explained that while the hijackers lived their day-to-day lives in an open manner, they pursued their inimical objectives in a cloistered, secretive, and highly covert manner that kept them on the periphery of the FBI's counterterrorism coverage. The FBI acknowledged that, quote, "the hijackers may have had contact with subjects of prior or current counterterrorism investigations in San Diego. Such contact occurred principally through the hijackers' attendance of religious services at various mosques in San Diego, some frequented by subjects of FBI counterterrorism investigations," end quote. However, the FBI argued that there is a significant difference between having contact and making contact, and contends that if the record does not suggest that the hijackers unilaterally or affirmatively sought out or initiated contact with the 14 persons named. Nonetheless, at least one FBI document prepared shortly after the September 11 attacks concluded that the hijackers, rather than operating in isolation, were assisted by a web of contacts in the United States. In an undated draft analysis based on information available as of November 2001, the FBI's Investigative Services Division concluded, quote, "Initial reporting from observers cast the hijackers as loners who stayed aloof from those around them. While those characterizations remain an accurate appraisal of the hijackers' general orientations toward most persons they came into contact with in the United States, more intensive scrutiny reveals that the hijackers, in particular, The 6 leader facilitators were involved with a much greater number of associates than was originally suspected. In addition to frequent and sustained interaction between and among the hijackers of the various flights before September 11th, the group maintained a web of contacts both in the United States and abroad. These associates, ranging in degrees of closeness, include friends and associates from universities and flight schools, former roommates, people they knew through mosques and religious activities, and employment contacts. Other contacts provided legal, logistical, or financial assistance, facilitated U.S. entry and flight school enrollment, or are known from Osama bin Laden related activities or training. End quote.